welcome to the second annual Ignite Institute Political Forum. We are super excited to have some returning guests from last year. In case you don't know, I am Mr. Smith. I teach social studies in the Design College. All the way to the left, we have Representative Buddy Wheatley, a Democrat from the 65th House District. Representative Adam Koenig, Republican from the 69th District. And Representative Banta from the 63rd District, also a Republican. So what are we doing here today? As you all know, we're in the middle of our legislative unit, and for each unit we have two guiding questions. Can somebody shout out what one of those guiding questions are?
What makes an effective legislator?
Correct. What makes an effective legislator? And what's the other?
How can individuals participate in the legislative process?
Exactly. How can individuals participate in the legislative process? So our goal here today is to try to get some answers to those questions directly from the people who are doing that work. So if you are a student of mine, I can't speak to the other teachers, but your job here today is to remember what these folks say to you so that you can use it as evidence when you write your argumentative paper at the end of the unit answering those questions. So make sure that you are gathering that information. And we will kind of go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask some general questions. First off, we'll kind of get to the point of what makes an effective legislator, and then I'll ask directly, how can other people get involved in the process? So, my first question, just to kind of get a little bit of background, and we'll just go down the line if we can you tell us why you chose to run for office? What issues are most important to you? And also, what is your career outside of the legislature? You can start with this.
This is on? We're good to go?
I don't think it is. There's a button on it.
I think we're on.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for coming out and being here today. And maybe you didn't have a choice, but I have a choice, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think my fellow legislators are here too. Thank you, Mr. Smith. And the question is, what made me become a legislator? And I can tell you that public service is within my background. I was a firefighter in the city of Covington for 20 years before I retired. And since that time, I've been an attorney for firefighters and public sector workers. So it's very much in the realm of public sector. I was interested in running and becoming a legislator when there became an opportunity in my area to serve again. I had kind of been in the firefighter business, as was my brother and my father and my grandfather and my great-grandfather, all Covington firefighters. I was able to go to law school and finish law school while I was a firefighter. I didn't actually finish until right after I retired. So as a second career, I became an attorney and became very interested in the legislative process. I found it fascinating in how laws are made and how policy is affected, and had the ability to do that when the person who was the legislator in my district before I became a legislator, he announced that he was going to retire. I had some interest in doing that kind of work, and I put my name in it and felt like my district is very specific to my upbringing, where I come from, where I went to high school, and where I served as a firefighter. And that looked like a natural fit. I have a lot of knowledge and interest in this area of policy making, and I had some interest in, particularly at the time when I ran for office, the pension issue in the state of Kentucky. It still is a pretty significant issue. But particularly in 2016, 2017, as I was preparing to run, the pension issue was a major issue. And like I said, it still is. I'm on the Public Pension Oversight Board, was named to that board as soon as I became a state legislator. And I can say with some a level of gratitude, and very thankful that the state legislature has become very serious about doing the pension system correctly with the contribution it's supposed to make as a state, and the pension system's going much better. I'll leave it there.
And I neglected to mention earlier, we had also invited Representative Ed Massey. Unfortunately, he had a conflict that he could not get out of this afternoon. So he apologizes and has promised to come back and make it up and have another event with us. So we'll schedule something different with him. But same question, Koenig.
All right, I think the first one was what made me run. And to be honest, I always wanted to do this. It's what I've always wanted to do my whole life. You know, the lesson I give to you all from that is find something you love to do. And so that I've never, ever once gotten up in the morning and felt like, oh, I gotta go to work. And I always love it. I never have a problem going to work and find somebody that'll pay you to do something you love and you'll have the world by the tail. So I've always wanted to do this. In fact, I came home from college and ran for city council at the age of 22, which is not that far off for you all, is it? And got elected. I spent 1 year on city council. I then was unelected for 2 years, which is another way of saying getting your butt beat. And so I didn't let that dissuade me. I thought I'd just run for county commissioner the next time, and was fortunately elected to that twice. And after 8 years there, I ran for the state legislature, and have been elected now 8 times to the state legislature. So I am in my 26th year of elective office, which is more than half of my life. And I'm one of those career politicians that everyone speaks so highly of all the time. But I do have another job. It is a real estate agent. So the people that put up the signs in the yard that say that houses for sale and help people buy and sell houses or rent property or whatever is my side job. And what was the other question?
What issues are most important?
What issues are most important? Keeping government out of our lives in general, probably, is the most important, and creating politicians like to say, well, you know, we've created jobs. Politicians don't create jobs. Business owners create jobs. Politicians and government can get in the way and make it more difficult or easier for businesses and organizations to create jobs. And I like to do what I can to make it easier so that people can have jobs and they can experience the American dream. They can take care of themselves and make money so that they can live a life that doesn't require them to rely on others or the government to do so.
I also would. This is exactly what I would be doing. Similar field.
It's great.
Find a job you love.
I am a retired educator. I actually retired from Kenton County Schools. And then the person that had this job before me decided to get married, moved to California. And so I ran the primary. I just thought it would be fun. It would be kind of a continuation of serving the public, which is, we know all educators, everybody in public ed, that's what you do your entire life, is you serve. And so I just consider this a continuation of it. My bills, and I would encourage you to put away your ideas of Democrat versus Republicans, because many of my bills, if you were ever tasked to look them up, would fall definitely in the category of what you usually consider Democrats doing. I'm very, very passionate about mental health. You may be excited to know we're going to get the 988 number for mental health, so that if someone is suicidal or they are having extreme difficulties, instead of dialing a 1-800-998, on and on, and when you're in crisis, as you know, that's a pretty tough thing to do. So we're going to have 988, which is going to be just like 911. I'm probably going to be running a very unpopular bill to fund that, and I don't care, because it would end up costing each phone owner about $8.40 a year to save a life. And I don't know about you, but if someone asked me for a $10 bill, say it'll save a life, I would gladly hand it to them. So also I'm very passionate about LGBTQ issues. I have a ban conversion therapy bill, eliminating the fourth-degree sodomy language out of our legislation. So when you hear Democrat and Republican, look at what they're doing, not just the name behind them.
That's awesome. I know those issues are very important to a number of our students, so we appreciate that. And if we'll just stick this way and go the other way, you say you're pushing that through. Just can you talk a little bit about the legislative process and your role? If you can do like a specific piece of legislation, or what is your role and how does that go for you?
The first thing usually happens is someone comes to you, and you may not know that there's a problem. And somebody comes to you and says, we really need a bill to do X. And you either agree or disagree. And then you start writing the bill with legislative consultants. And then once you get the bill written, you file it. And you can pre-file it, or you can file it in January when you begin. Remember, we're part-time. We're supposed to be January through April. How's that working out for you guys?
Part of the time I was
Yeah. So what we do then is the bill is filed, and then you start going around, and I call it begging season. And you go around and you find people that you respect and that you really want their name on your bill. For example, Representative Wheatley, I asked him to be on a couple of my bills. Representative Koenig, he just has to. So, but it's the season of begging. So you go around, you ask other legislators to please get on your bill. Then you have the other hurdle of getting your bill through caucus. So you meet and the caucus is, for example, my caucus is 75 Republicans. So I have to stand in front of them and explain the bill and ask them if they would please go ahead and vote for it. If they say no, then it's my job to convince them, and hence the begging on and on. So once it gets out of caucus, we determine that there will be enough votes, Democrat, Republican, to get the bill across the finish line. It goes to the floor. And you can have a bill that may be voted on 93 to 7. And because there's 100 people in the House, and you think to yourself, I scored, this is going forward. Well, then you got the guys in the Senate that don't even hear it. So your bill dies on the signing die. So then you start all over again. For example, this will be my 3rd year running banning conversion therapy. I figure if I talk about it enough, if I pester them enough, eventually they might just want me to go away and I'll hear it on the floor because I know that it would win votes. So that's kind of how it goes. And did you guys have anything to? Oh, I forgot about veto and something about the Oh. So then if it gets out, let's say you get a bill all the way through the House and you get it through the Senate, then it goes to the governor. And if the governor doesn't like your bill, he can veto it. If you've got time, you can bring that veto back around and override the veto. If not, again, let's say it's April 10th, and your bill is vetoed, it's probably not going to have enough time to get back in and get re-voted on. So then it's vetoed, sign die, it's dead. You're back to the next year. You have to be persistent.
So you mentioned persistence and bringing stuff up over and over again. I know Mr. Koenig, I think you've been working on a couple things.
You read my mind?
Yeah.
I've been running for about a dozen years a bill on constables. Anybody know what a constable is? What is a constable?
Isn't it similar to like a sheriff?
Similar, yeah, it is similar in that they have police powers and they're elected. And they don't have to, and the vast majority of them have no training at all. Now, most sheriffs have training, they have an office, they have other responsibilities. A constable has no responsibilities, no boss, no nothing. They can do the job, they cannot do the job. And, your police officers, city, county, sheriffs, deputies, all have to go through an intense I think, 23-week training down at Eastern Kentucky University or a couple other places, but from up here, they go to Eastern, in order to learn how to do the job right and not violate your civil rights, and learn how to do all the things that they're supposed to do. These constables all have to have that training. I try to get rid of them, and I try to allow counties to get rid of them. Now I've downshifted into they can continue to exist, let's just take away their police power unless they're trained. Now that I downshifted that far, I actually got it through the House for the first time, and got it through Senate committee, but then it didn't get taken up. But I'm making progress, and I'm stubborn, and I will keep going. Was that the one you were thinking of, or were you thinking sports betting?
I was thinking, yeah.
No, sports betting. This year, for the 4th year, I'll be filing a bill to legalize sports betting in the state. You have to be 18, so sorry for some of you, but you'll get there, I promise. It's only been legal outside of a couple states now for a little over 3 years. And, Indiana has it, Tennessee has it, West Virginia has it, Illinois has it, Virginia has it. They're all border states of ours. Ohio, everyone's for it. They just are already running over the details. They will have it before long, and it happens every single day in this state. Either you can download an app. You shouldn't do this. You can download an app from an offshore place and wager, or something that's common in other parts of the state, certainly not here, are bookies. And, you can find somebody that will take your wager on sports, and we can go right across the river. So it's time to make it legal here in Kentucky so that we can protect people, make sure that everything that's being done is being done on the up and up. And, well, we can generate some revenue that we could use in our state coffers. And, so those are two things I've been working on, but trying to think of the best example of to expand on the process of something that is passed. And I'm going to talk to you all about gambling and alcohol. That's great for an underage crowd.
I knew we were going to go there. So go ahead.
Who here has ordered something online and had it shipped to their house? Okay, excellent. So more or less everybody. And if you haven't, your parents or siblings probably have. Up until last year, you could do that for virtually everything except for alcohol. So I had a bill, and surprisingly enough, it went through the first year. But it took a year to get to that point. We started immediately after the 2019 session, so in April, bringing in all the stakeholders. And those stakeholders are numerous, but they're basically the producers, the people that make alcohol, the wholesalers, the people that take it from the producer and then take it to the retailers, and then of course the retailers. And because they all have competing interests in this, and the retailers in particular felt like that was going to hurt them because you could buy online rather than having to go to a liquor store or gas station or whatnot to get your alcohol. And I'm telling you, we had probably 7 or 8 meetings with all those stakeholders, trying to get as many of them on board or neutralize their concerns as much as possible. It was a very complicated bill, and I've got them all somewhere in an email folder, and I have at least 50 different versions of that bill. That is the kind of part of the behind the scenes, which I can go into more detail later if there's time and a desire. But to get something that complex, and look, some of them were in court. The retailers hated it, they opposed it, they fought it, every time I gave them a little something, thinking that that would make them happy, they found something else to argue about. Alcohol law is very arcane, and all they have to do is start a rumor that, oh, this bill's going to do this. And most of the legislators don't understand alcohol law. Unfortunately, I do now, and I have to explain to 100 House members the truth about it. And by the time I got that done, they'd start another rumor over here. I had to go put out that fire. So it was a year in the making. It was a ton of time, a ton of work. Not the hardest thing I've passed, but close to it. And you know, there are some bills that fly right through. A bill like that takes so much work and effort. And you know, we'll maybe get into that a little bit more about what makes a good legislator in the committee system.
Thanks. And I'll just add another perspective and try to, you know, fill in a few more things with my legislators here. So, you know, Kentucky's been a state for 200 plus years. We have lots of laws, and some of those laws are affected, and that's what we do. We make the policy. That's what legislators do. The executive branch runs the government, and there's the governor has a say, obviously, in the final passage of bills. Sometimes that can be overridden, that veto process. But you have a House, 100 members House, a Senate with 38 members, and us three were part of the House, 100 members. And that House currently has 75 Republican and 25 Democrats. I think you're looking at three of the most nonpartisan legislators that are down in Frankfurt, but we represent this area up here in northern Kentucky. So for a bill to pass, it has to pass both chambers, and the governor has to sign it, or there's a veto. And for it to pass in the House, if a bill starts in the House, it can start in either chamber. If it starts in the House, it has to pass the committee, it has to be assigned to a committee, it has to pass the committee, then it has to pass the full House, then it goes to the Senate, it has to pass the Senate committee, then it goes to the full Senate for a vote, and then if it's passed both House and Senate, then it can go to the governor for his determination. And Representative Koenig is the chairperson of one of the really important House committees that bills have to pass. The two bills that he was just speaking of have to pass his committee, but he still has to get the votes in his committee. These are some of the begging and the relationship stuff you have to do to persuade people. A lot of our work is persuading. People try to persuade us into voting and get us information on how things are and why things should be voted on. And we have to persuade our fellow legislators this is a good idea and this is not a good idea. For myself included, I'm part of the 25-member minority party in the House of Representatives. For me to get something passed, or at least something I'm interested in, I have to really work, not only my 25-member caucus, but the 75-member caucus just to get it passed. And for the most part, the bills that I deal with are, there's been a couple pension bills that I had some success in. Those are nonpartisan bills also. And this is something that happens when you are in the minority party. It eventually gets taken, and I know that my friend here to my right has had something like this happen through his career. It gets absorbed into another bill that somebody else's name is on it. So I've had two bills passed that were pension bills, or kind of small things I'm very proud of, that eventually took the name of another state legislator because there was a bunch of other pension issues in that bill. So my bill got absorbed into another bill. And that's one of the ways that you can be effective in the minority party for legislation that is important, especially nonpartisan legislation. I'll just say real quick, another thing that I got interested in since I've been in the legislature, and this is something else that's happened. Representative Koenig has been there quite a long time. I've only been there 3 years, and there's another issue that just has really spiked my interest. I got very interested in elections and voting. And I've had a couple of things happen positive related to that, and I've got a lot more things I'd like to do. Maybe we'll get into that later.
Yeah, thank you. Students, I hope you're kind of recognizing all the different ins and outs, all the things that it takes to get a bill passed, all the ways that a bill can die in the process, and kind of the personal skills that are crucial for getting something you want done. When you were talking about committees, it reminded me in my class, we started a legislative simulation. We broke into parties and committees and big leadership for committees, and their first move was to try to impeach me as president. So I'm not sure what that means, but for our next question, can you talk about campaigning? I know a lot of people have seen campaign commercials for presidents and senators and things, and it's different at the state level. So can you tell us what kind of things that you do when you're running a campaign every 2 years to try to get elected?
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, campaigning, yes, so the House of Representatives in the state of Kentucky, you do run every 2 years, which feels like you're running almost all the time. It's very simple. If you have a primary opponent, if somebody signs up to run for me as a Democrat in my particular district, I would start a campaign, and there are lots of rules related to how you can campaign, when you can collect contributions, when you cannot, who you can collect them from, the dollar amounts that you can collect. So all those things you kind of learn. And when I have announced, I'll use my second race. Your first race is a little bit different because you have lots of time. You're not in the state legislature at the time. The state legislature is really intense session times, January, February, and March of every year now. So the filing deadline is in January, and that's sort of when campaigns kick off, is when once you file, it's officially that you're running. So you do all the things. You organize teams of people, perhaps on our level, it's family members, close associates, friends that you've known for a long time. You will figure out what you're going to do as far as signs, as far as getting your messages out, as far as having what do we all need anymore? You need a Facebook page, a Twitter account, you need an internet page, a web page, and you get designers to help you with that. You get yard signs, and of course you've got to do that thing that I'm sure we all love. You have to ask people for money. You have to ask for contributions, and sometimes that includes asking strangers, people that don't really know all that well, but they support your particular things that you're interested in, your party or you are interested in. So that's what campaigning's been like for me. I've also walked my particular district is one of the smallest districts geographically in the state. So I'm very familiar with my district. So I walked door to door to likely voters and said, do you want to talk about the upcoming campaign? I'm Buddy Wheatley. This is the things I stand for, and I asked them to support me. And you do that quite a bit. I did my first race. I did months of walking, not every day, of course, but quite a bit. And you'll do that just about every campaign, depending on your availability of time, your ability to do it. In some places, it's if you have a really close race, it looks like you're going to have a race sometime. So in Kentucky, the primary is usually in May, and if you are successful in your primary, you go on to the general election. You might take a little break during the summer, depending on how busy you want to be, and you start getting yard signs up. I didn't mention yard signs. It's kind of important still in the races, as you see all over your yards, all over the place when it gets close to election day. So that's another part of campaigning. You do some of these debates where you have your opponent up on the stage and you have a moderator ask questions, and that's a good thing. It's where the people who attend the debate or watch on TV, they get an opportunity to feel you out, to kind of get an idea of what this candidate is like, what's their personality like, instead of just seeing something in the paper or a newspaper flyer. One thing about modern day campaigning is that you're out there a lot more, you're much more visible. Public speaking becomes pretty important. You have to get better at that. I keep trying to get better. I'm sure we all do. And that's something that happens all the way up until the day of the election. And from there, you have, in your last week of campaigning, they call Get Out the Vote. You go to the people who are most likely to support you, knock on doors. This is where your family, your volunteers come in and they help you knock on the doors and say, please remember to vote November, whatever it is, the election day, and vote for Buddy Wheatley, and you'll get elected.
Just wanted to highlight that he said public speaking is very important. So, here at Ignite, if you guys didn't know, one of the things we focus on is professional habits, and one of those is public speaking. So these freshmen are getting their taste, a first taste of it for some of them. Some of them don't really care for it. But it's something that I'm glad you highlighted the importance of that. Thank you.
Nothing like experience to become a better public speaker. I was never my strong suit, and when you have to get up and speak in front of 100 people on the House floor and cameras, and you know you're on KT, and you really need to focus on what you're saying, that'll make you better in a hurry. So anyway, I'm going to talk about campaigning, and as I went down my resume, I have an interesting perspective in that. I've run for city council, I run for county commissioner, I run for state representative, and also a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, in 2003, I was the Republican nominee for state treasurer. So I've run a bunch of different races. And my first race where I really had a campaign was in 1998 when I first ran for county commissioner. And I was far and away the underdog in both the primary and especially the general election. And I knocked on doors in that first time in the primary. I didn't have much money. I had just lost a race for city council. Nobody really thought I was serious, to be honest. I got outspent in that race. But I lived in the community a long time. My opponent was relatively new. I played soccer. My whole family played soccer. We were in on the soccer community, as it were. I had gone to County Catholic, so I had kind of a lot of County Catholic backers, as it were, people at least knew who I was and wanted to vote for me. So that all helped, but I got outspent, but you couldn't outwork me. And then I ran against the sitting incumbent in that general election, and he outspent me, but he couldn't outwork me. But the point is, you have to raise, in that race, I had to raise some money. I sent out, I think, 2 mailers, and you got yard signs. And back then, there was this thing called the newspaper that people used to get on their front page, in their driveway. And I'll be perfectly honest, I never really considered the concept of whether I was going to win or even had a chance. I just knew that I was better than the guy on the spot, and I was going to work my tail off to make it happen. And Sunday they had a big layout of here's all the races, here's kind of a thing on candidates, and 2 days before the election. And I remember walking down a street called Cherry Lane, I think it is, in Independence. And for some reason, it was the last street I get choked up sometimes about this. And all of a sudden, everyone I talked to on that street said they were going to vote for me. And that was the first time I thought I could. And it shows what knocking on doors will do, but it also, I figured out later, was because all these people who didn't know how to vote in their county commission race were waiting, and they were like, okay, it's Sunday, we got to figure out what we're going to do. Here's the newspaper, let's look things up. So that's not something we have. It's kind of where I was going with all that. Now, fast forward to today's world. I was always known as the guy who knocked on more doors than anybody and worked harder than everybody else. And I didn't knock on doors last year because of, COVID and all. But when I had fun in 2018, I knocked on doors. It doesn't work as well as it used to. And here's my theory. In a world where when your phone rings and it's not a number you recognize, you don't answer it. Well, if somebody knocks on your door and you're not expecting someone, they don't answer. And some of them get upset that you bothered them. And in today's universe where everyone's upset about everything, not sure it's the best, it's what you do anymore. So the key, if you're going to run for a larger office, right now, at least sadly, is you have to raise money. And I said I love every part of the job. The only part I don't like is having to sit on the phone and raise money. And I've been at it long enough that it's a whole lot easier for me than it is for new people. Because people know me, they know where I stand. They've been giving me money for years, some of them. But also I chair a committee that has recently been described as pretty important. And you know, that helps me raise money. And I put in the time and effort to do that. But, and this is, and some people think, oh gosh, it's terrible that you have to raise that money. And it kind of is. But, and I want you to take this away and maybe, you know, there'll be an extra credit on your question on your test or something. We have to raise money to get people's attention. Because people aren't tuned in to their local government or who their state representative is and what's going on. And we have to tell them, I'm great, and here's why. And if I haven't convinced you that I'm great, well, my opponent's not so great, and here's why. If you as a citizen spend the time and effort to keep up with, as best you can, what's going on, what people are doing, what your local legislator, your county commissioner, your city council person was, we wouldn't have to raise all that money to then bombard you and tell you how wonderful we are. Okay? So nowadays, yes, yard signs are important, but it's Twitter, it's Facebook, it's sending you to my website, which has a fair amount of information. Of course, just the information I want to tell you. You know, digital advertising. I'm hoping this year, you know, I used to advertise on cable. Heck, I got rid of cable this year, okay? And I was on the cable board for, I don't know, 14 years before I went to Frankfurt. So I had an affinity for it. But, you know, I hope to start getting my advertising, not just on cable, but on Hulu and YouTube TV and all the rest of them, those ads they slide in the middle of programs. So that's, you know, touch people as many times as you can. I'll still do mailers. And, you know, unfortunately, you have to put up signs because people see a lot of your signs, they think, oh, well, that person must be good, or they must be ahead. And when people think you're going to win, they're more likely to vote for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned social media. I was wondering if that was going to be part of the strategy. And also just plug the design college, which, you know, as part of what we do here is learn to do marketing and branding for people. So if you're looking for any interns or people to help with your messaging, maybe we've got folks. Can you tell us about campaigning, how that's going for you?
Ditto with everything they said. I will tell you one thing that surprised me. Once I decided to run, there were 5 people that wanted to run at the same time. And so we all had to get up and we had to give a speech to, it's a group, it's a committee, and about 30 people. I got through that part. The thing that shocked me was when I went down to meet with the Republican Party head, they pulled out all their research on me and put it down. And they said, this is very interesting. You have no social media presence. So there is nothing we have to undo. So the only reason I'm mentioning that is 56-year-old woman. I just didn't deal with it because I had enough personal interactions during my day. I did not need to go home and get on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. I just didn't have the chops to keep going all day with that. But think about that. I could have gone down there and they could have done a background search on me, which it was a folder full, and it was impressive what they did. But they didn't find anything on me. So just please think of that as you use social media and you use things like that, that it can definitely impede if you get mad one night, don't do it, you know, just hold your breath, count to 10, think about it a day or two, then do it. Because that lives on and lives forever.
That's a great point. I'm very grateful, and I'm sure you would agree that when we were their age, that didn't exist. And for me, that's a great thing. We're just checking on the time. If Mr. Massey was here, I'm not sure we'd have any chance of hitting our deadline, but I think we'll just make it. Some of you have talked about it already, but can you go in a little bit more depth about the importance of committees and what committees you're on, and how that works?
I'm on judiciary, and I'm the co-chair of the judiciary committee. We hear all kinds of things, usually about law changes, licensing and occupations, which I'll let Representative King talk about. I'm on his committee that he's chairman. I'm on the education committee. So anytime you're on a committee, you are also on the budget of that committee. So one committee kind of equals two committees. Is that fair?
Not everyone's on that. Not everyone's on the
No? Okay.
They're just like,
They're just lucky, okay. Let's see, what other committees am I on? I'm trying to think. Education, law, judiciary, L&O. And economic development. So I have those, and then the leadership in the caucus can also put you on committees during the summer that are to research and educate so that we can find out if there are laws and things that need to be addressed to change things in the law.
so as mentioned, I'm chairman of the House Licensing, Occupations, and Administrative Regulations Committee, which anything that needs a license to operate, as given by the state, comes through my committee, generally speaking. So I'm a realtor. I have to be a licensed realtor to perform those services. So that falls under that category. If a lot of medical professionals need licenses, everything from art therapists to architects to massage therapy, and about probably 4 or 5 dozen other professions. Plus, anybody that is in the gambling or alcohol space, if they have a license. So, deal with a lot of stuff there. I also am the newest member of the Education Committee. I'm on Banking and Insurance Committee. I'm on local government, given my time on local government, and on small business and information technology. And in this interim, I am co-chair of the task force on pari-mutuel wagering, which is, pari-mutuel wagering is what you do with the horse track. So, committee is important to the process because that's where everything starts. So, I don't want this to sound obnoxious, but if somebody has a bill sent to my committee, their first stop, if they want to get it to go somewhere, is to come see me. And I have to say yes or no. If I say no, your bill's probably dead. So that comes with part of being a good legislator is having good relations with as many people as you can. This job is different than most, but it's not different in that you still have coworkers. They're not coworkers in the traditional sense, that they're hired by somebody else and you're all stuck together. I guess they are hired by somebody else now, should be. So it is more like that. But, am I going to be more lenient and interested to hear a bill from someone who I like and who votes for my bills that come out? Absolutely. If you're someone who votes against all my bills, I'm probably not going to hear your bill, even if I like it. I might find some other way of making it happen, but, that's just the reality of the situation. And I'm not unusual in that regard. In fact, I'm probably more lenient than many, and that's, everyone's got but we have 16 committees, and in the House. So, there's always a way around it. There's always a different committee you can try to get it sent to. But, and then, then you gotta get the votes of my committee. And one thing and we've gone over the process, and here's the important part. If you think of filing a bill, getting it in committee, our committees meet once a week. So you got one chance a week to get a bill on the agenda and get it passed. And then if you pass it to the committee, then you got to get the leadership, the speaker, the majority floor leader, to agree to call it up on the House floor. And you got to get it passed. Then it goes over to the Senate. And then you got to start all over. It goes to the committee. You got to talk to the committee chair. You got to get it on the agenda, blah, 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 blah. And then it goes to the governor. You got to put the governor veto it. And then it comes back, and then you got to get the votes to override the veto. In an odd numbered year, you've got 30 days to do all that. That's hard. It's hard. In an even numbered year, we got 60 days to do it. Makes it less hard, but it's still hard. In Congress, they go year round. There's always a chance to get it done there. So, again, unless it's an easy, no-brainer bill, it takes a lot of work to get all the way through that process.
Thank you, Chair. And I've said that a number of times because I was previously on license and occupations. But currently, as I mentioned, I'm on the Public Pension Oversight Board, which is not a committee that passes legislation, but it's a board committee. The standing committees that I'm on, one's called State Government, one is Transportation, and I'm losing one all of a sudden, but no, I am on an A&R budget review committee for state government. So, I think you've heard emphasized here how important it is relationships are and how difficult it is to pass a bill. There usually are about 1,000 bills, almost more than 1,000 bills are introduced every year. And all the legislators are down there, they have to be familiar, they should be familiar as much as possible with as many bills as possible. At the same time, trying to get their own legislation passed. And, sometimes that involves really important relationship building over time. And then you have to have something called relationships with leadership, at least enough of the leadership who will push the bill on the floor of the Senate and the floor of the House. So those are all very important things. It's kind of difficult to describe it as you're sitting there listening to legislators. This is what we do in Frankfurt. It just does require a lot of work. And a lot of work during something that's kind of important to understand. These committees that we're talking about are the standing committees, or the committees that meet once a week during the session when bills are passed. When we're not in session, as we are not in session right now, that's called, in Kentucky, it's called the interim. So from about mid-April all the way to the following January, we're in the interim period, but we have a lot of committee hearings to discuss these bills that might be listened or might be heard during the session. We're only going to pass it during the session, but you do a lot of prep time in the interim, and that's what's going on now. And we are all doing that with our bills, and Representative Banta mentioned a couple that I will support, and I am going to get on, so I look forward to it.
All right, so I hope you guys have gotten some answers to what makes an effective legislature. I think they've gone into that. I think you mentioned relationships would be the thing that I would have pulled out if I were you. So I just want to ask you guys directly, one thing we want our students to know is that even though they're not old enough to vote, they do still have the agency to affect the world around them. So whether you want to address students directly or just in general, how can people, individuals, get involved in government and the legislative process?
I get to go first. I can tick off a bunch of things. A, vote. How many, anybody here 18 yet?
These are all freshmen.
Freshmen, all right, so you got a few years. But I actually, when I spent 10 years in minority, and an idea I got from actually, I think it was Lloyd students, had to do with, and I don't even know if this is enforced anywhere, but every senior in high school is supposed to learn how to register to vote, how to fill out an absentee ballot in case they go in college, and the mechanisms of voting. You all should be able to take advantage of your ability to vote when you turn 18. And then, by the way, I also passed the bill to lower the legal age to run for city council from 21 to 18. So you can run for city council at 18 if you want. But vote, get involved. Like I said, know what's going on in your government because it affects your life. It affects how much you pay in taxes. It affects what you can and can't do as far as businesses, what the speed limit is, you know, whether you can have a chicken coop in your backyard when you have a house or not, stuff like that. Contact your legislators, be respectful. If you send me something saying, I'm going to vote against you and you'll never get reelected if you do this, there's no better way to get me to do this than to tell me that you're going to beat me if I do it. Nobody wants to hear that. You don't want to hear that in your personal life, do you? Be respectful. If you get the opportunity to meet the people who represent you, whether it be the president all the way down to city council or school board, take that opportunity to meet them, reach out to them, and follow up with them so that they know you, and when you contact them and share your opinion on something, they have a better idea of who you are and will take you more seriously. Go to city council meetings, go to school board meetings. Every city has a zoning board and an ethics commission and other things like that. When you get to the point in your life, whether it's 22 or 42 or 62, volunteer to do that. You're serving your fellow man and woman and citizen when you do that. And if you get to the point and you're so inclined, run for office. If you have the means and you have somebody that you like or has done something for you, put up a sign in your yard. Write them a check for their campaign so that they can help get reelected. Is there anything else? I'll let you all, I think I hit everything. You all fill in what I missed.
I think as advice for freshman level people that might be interested in politics, might be interested in how you can do something. Almost nothing, and I would not have said this to the freshman class that I was in. Nobody would have said this most likely. But what's so important for our young people today is discernment. When we were coming through school at your age, we didn't have the internet and social media. And we were almost had to go look for information, find it. And there wasn't that much out there. There weren't that many sources. For you, it's almost completely the opposite. There's so much information out there, but what's so very unfortunate is a lot of the information is not good information, not information that is reliable, not information that is credible or backed up by evidence. It's information that is so discerning what is good and what is not is going to be really important for you your next few years as you mature, become adults, and maybe get involved in politics. So politically, what you can do, of course, the voting part is very important, registering to vote. Can you be involved in a campaign at your age? Of course you can. You could volunteer. Of course, you want to do that for your parents if they're interested and if you're interested. I've had a few young people want to be part of my campaign, and keep your ears and eyes out open for that if you're interested. Be aware. Just be aware of what's going on in politics. And another piece of advice I would give is sometimes we take this stuff too seriously. It's all very, very important. But sometimes, especially in these days and these times, it's a little bit too either this way or that way, and it's not. It's a lot more, the important things happen a lot more in here in the middle. That's where the real work gets done. That's where compromise is made, and good laws get passed when you involve a lot of people. So have that kind of open mind and have that kind of awareness and really practice discernment. What do you say?
Absolutely, thank you. I'm going to play that again in my class. Discernment, that is what I couldn't put it in better words, even though I try often in class.
I would just say research. Everything that they said, plus research on your own. Just because your friend likes something or something somebody's doing, you may feel differently. And the research is available to you. So I would say definitely put those great minds in that to work and take a look at the individuals as far down as city councils and mayors and getting involved at the grassroots level and involvement there. It's really interesting to do that.
All right, we are right on time. Just one last question, a little more lighthearted. We have a lot of people here I know who are interested in politics and government. And there's a lot of different ways that happens. Do you guys have either a politician that you really look up to, or do you have a favorite political movie, book, TV show, something that you would recommend to anybody interested in? Anybody can jump in.
Well, probably my favorite politician was my mother, who served on city council in Villa Hills for years. I served with her for 3 years until they kept her and got rid of me. Her brother, my uncle, was mayor of Fort Mitchell for 2 decades. So, they were important, but I'm probably where my belief system is probably best described by Ronald Reagan. And he's probably my spirit animal, as it were. And my favorite political book, probably my favorite book, is Hardball by Chris Matthews. He's a Democrat, and I don't care. It has got every lesson on politics you could probably want if you want to be a politician, or if you just like good political stories.
I know he talks a lot about, he tells stories about his time working for Democrats, but working with Republicans. And I appreciate just a little behind the scenes moment for you guys out there on that front, that as these folks were coming up here, they made it a point not to sit Democrats on one side, Republicans on the other. So I really enjoyed that, so I appreciate that. Any other?
I would talk about favorite politician, somebody who actually passed away quite a while ago. Senator Paul Wellstone from Minnesota was a bit of an inspiration for me. Really come from very humble beginnings, but I'll let you look that up. Senator Paul Wellstone from Minnesota. There's a lot of positive things I can say. I don't want to go into his life, but also very influential in my life was my Republican mother, who was extremely intelligent, interested in politics. I come from a family of 12, 6 boys, 6 girls, and we were about 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 independent, and we got into some Sunday dinner battles like you wouldn't believe, but she was able to sort of be the moderator, and those were really informative years for me, and a big influence. Too many books and movies maybe to mention, but if I come up with a good one, I'll share it.
All right.
Animal Farm.
Great one. I think we might read that at some point. I'm not sure. I'll know the English curriculum as well. That's a good book. All right. We are exactly on time. Well done, folks. I appreciate it. Thank you, students. I hope you got something out of this. I know that a lot of good stuff. Yeah, I see some clapping. Let's go ahead and give it a